remind yourself that whatever you did today was enough. Tomorrow is another day, a fresh start, a new beginning. Have you forgotten that when we became Christians and were baptized to become one with Jesus Christ, we died with him? For we died and were buried with Christ by baptism. And just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glorious power of the Father, now we also may live new lives. Since we have been united with him in his death, we will also be raised as he was. Our old sinful selves were crucified with Christ so that sin might lose its power in our lives. We are no longer slaves to sin, for when we died with Christ, we were set free from the power of sin. And since we died with Christ, we know we will also share his new life. We are sure of this because Christ rose from the dead and he will never die again. Death no longer has any power over him. He died once to defeat sin, and now he lives for the glory of God. Okay, my name is Diane Pearson. I am 67 years old, and I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. Grew up during the 60s and 70s, and we did not have much, if anything at all. But I had a wonderful, wonderful, precious mother who held us all together, totally devoted to me and to my brother and to my dad. And I had a father who was wonderful, loved him dearly, but he was an alcoholic, and it was very difficult in having someone in the family. But I was a daddy's girl, and then my father was tragically killed in a work incident when I was 15 years old, and my brother was 13, and that was rather difficult. But we were raised in church. My mother came from all of her family were members of the church. My father, not so much, but he obeyed the gospel in his earlier years when he was with my mother. The church that we were really raised in was ultra-conservative, very fundamental. We did not have youth groups, but what we would do is the teens every Sunday, we would go home with friends, and we would stay there and have lunch with them and just fellowship that way, and then we would come back to church on Sunday. And we always went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, during the gospel meetings. Anytime the church doors were open, we were there. I obeyed the gospel when I was 13 years old, and I remember that just like it was yesterday. And sometimes people will ask, well, how did you feel? And your heart, when you come up out of that water, there was nothing more that was the biggest grin on my face. My heart was so full of love for God that all I wanted to do was live for him and to be the Christian that I felt I could be. And I did that for quite a while. But then I started to work when I was 19. I went right out of high school and started working, and worked with people who were not Christians. And unfortunately, I allowed them to influence me. And they, like I said, they lived a much different lifestyle than I did. And as a result of getting caught up in that lifestyle, I made so many poor decisions. But the one constant for me was God, and it was the church. I can remember that that I thought, well, no matter how many times I would, go to church, I would always go to church. But I would, in the back of my mind was, I am not worthy to put myself in here. I am a hypocrite. That was good enough, but I continued to attend. I mean, what better place for a hypocrite to go than to church? I mean, I've always felt that. So I kept putting one foot in front of another and going through that front door. I prayed a lot. And I let God carry me. Well, I didn't let him. He carried me when I didn't know that he did. I was always constantly asking myself and thinking, why does God continually forgive me when I'm continually sinning? But a minister friend told me, he said, most important, God loves me. And he loved me so much that he did indeed send his only son to die on that cross, someone who was most precious to him, for me, for my sins and the sins of this world. And as a result, his blood continually washes us. Continually washes us. So today, fast forward several years to say the least, I have a wonderful husband. I've been married to him for a little over 7 years. He obeyed the gospel a couple of years ago, and it has been incredible. It's been awesome. I think all of my life, all I ever really wanted was to be married to another Christian, to have a life where we grew together, attended church together. I have that now, and it is so precious to me that I look forward to coming to church with him every Sunday, or whatever happens here. Our fellowship meals, it's just wonderful. We are now reading through the Bible, and that is amazing. He really enjoys it, and I read the Bible, and we both discuss it, and it's just been such a reward. And of course, we have 2 of our youngest grandchildren now that come to church with us quite regularly, and they don't miss very much, and CA wants to make sure that they do come to church. And that's why we have them come over on Saturday afternoons. I may be looking like a zombie by the time Sunday afternoon gets here, but those children are in church and they're learning. And hopefully, it's saying you bring your child up in the way of the Lord and he will not depart. When I say he will not depart, he might depart for a little while. Look at me. But I've seen this happen, and I've seen them return to him. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to those of you who are new Christians, young Christians, and I put that in quotation marks because young is just, it's relative. You can be 18 or 13, you can be 45, you can be 70, you can be 90. It doesn't matter. Obey the gospel. If you obey it at 90, that is wonderful. But a new Christian, there's just some challenges. But the one thing that I think is most important is that we are not perfect. You are not perfect. I am not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. That's a given. But know that you are not perfect, and that's okay. As a Christian, I say stay in the Word. Read the Word. Get you a good study Bible and read. Whether it's read the Bible through a whole year, finding a devotional. but it's very important to stay in the Word. Stay in the church. When those doors are open, please attend the church. Surround yourself with seasoned Christians, those who have been, and that may mean, we have the knowledge, to seek me out, to seek anybody out, talk to us. Do I know everything? Absolutely not. But I know how much I love the Word, I love the Lord, and this is the wealth of information. This tells you how to live. This is what we need to be in. We need to share with others. Pray. You can ask God anything. You can tell him anything. That's what he wants us to do. He wants us to come to him. He wants us to know that he loves us. That is that to me is so very, very important. Number one is that he loves us. He loves us so much. I can't state it enough. Those of us who are parents or grandparents know how important our children are to us. Can you imagine, you look at Abraham taking Isaac to the mountain, and he was going to sacrifice his own son because that's what God wanted him to do? I can't even imagine what God must have gone through when he had to turn his face from his son while he was on the cross and say, I love you, Diane Pearson, so much that I sent my precious son to die on the cross. Now, for my sins, now if that isn't love, I don't know what is. And in the New Testament, one very critical, beautiful passage is the chapter 13, 1 Corinthians, and it talks about how love is the greatest. First, however, let me tell you about something else that is better than any of them. If I could speak in any language in heaven or on earth but didn't love others, I would only be making meaningless noise like a loud gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, and if I knew all the mysteries of the future and knew everything about everything, but didn't love others, what good would I be? And if I had the gift of faith, so that I could speak to a mountain and make it move, without love, I would be no good to anybody. If I gave everything I have to the poor, and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would be of no value whatsoever. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Love does not demand its own way. Love is not irritable, and it keeps no record of when it has been wronged. It is never glad about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth runs out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Love will last forever, but prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will all disappear. Now we know only a little, and even the gift of prophecy reveals little. But when the end comes, these special gifts will all disappear. It's like this. When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child does. But when I grew up, I put away childish things. Now we see things imperfectly, as in a poor mirror, but then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me now. There are three things that will endure: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Now, there's one thing I would like to close with, and it's a little saying, but I think it really is true and something that I think we all should do. At the end of the day, as the sun sets, put down your troubles, count your blessings, remind yourself that whatever you did today was enough. Tomorrow is another day. a fresh start, a new beginning.